Hello, my name's Daniel, and this video is all about you playing Bach on the piano. Today we have the Gigue from the first Partita. Welcome to the channel and welcome to this tutorial. My aim is to give you inspiration and to share knowledge and experience to help you reach new levels in your Bach playing. So today we have the Gigue from the first Partita in B-flat major BWV 825, and here's the start of it. So it's joyful, it's energetic, vibrant, a lot of jumping around, a lot of challenges, both musical and technical. So I'll be talking about 20 points and I'll be going into a substantial amount of detail. Incidentally, whether you play this piece or not, this video contains a lot of information and advice which can help you in playing any piece of Bach on the piano. In the description below, I've listed where each of these points occur in the video in case you want to see any of them again. Also in the description below you can see a link to download a free copy of the score. So the 20 points are the emotional content, the dance elements, the tempo, the articulations, the dynamics, the ornamentation, the repeats and the pedaling. And following this discussion on the interpretation, I will talk about actually how to play the notes, how to solve the technical problems, including which hand plays what. Also, how to practice the piece efficiently, suitable fingerings, evennesses, mastering the trills, freedom from tension, correct hand position, tone quality, achieving speed, playing in time, accuracy in the leaps, and I'll also discuss aspects of memorization. So there's 20 points in total and I hope you find it interesting and valuable. Firstly, the emotional content. That's the most important aspect really. All aspects of the interpretation must relate in some way to that. Students have a tendency to add the interpretation later after the technical mastery, but the musical expression is really inseparable from the technique. So never play mechanically without any concept. The emotional concept is personal. I will share my own thoughts about this. A lot of it is based on my instinctive reaction to music, based on my knowledge of the composer, having performed many of his works, and also knowing and loving many of the non-keyboard works as well. So it's partly instinct, but definitely there's an inquiring thought needed. I've also studied books about the treatises of the time and they all talk about emotions, incidentally. So there should be nothing cold and intellectual about studying. So it's very personal. In essence, it's really too profound to describe. Words fall short. It's a limitation really to try and describe it, but it's useful nevertheless to give a broad concept. Also, the emotional concept can change. It's never static. It's full of subtle, spontaneous nuances that emerge, particularly in a concert. And everything that I'm sharing today about the interpretation can evolve, and that's part of our living relationship to music. So what are some of the clues to the emotion? Well, firstly, we have a major key, a fast tempo of leaping around. So it's a happy piece, it's a fun piece, but it's not superficial. Other clues, we should also look at the inherent emotion of the gigue being a dance. Also relevant is our perception of tempo, the use of dissonance and consonance, and tension and resolution in the harmony. Harmonies are hugely relevant in understanding the passing affects or the emotions, and all these help to give a sense of the emotional journey. So there's much freedom for each performer. I'm simply sharing my own views for your consideration. And before I talk more about emotion, let's look at the dance elements and the tempo. So it's a gigue. There are two kinds of gigues. There's the French, which has dotted rhythms, or there's Italian gigue like this one, and that often has perpetual motion and triple groupings, tripleness. Either triplets in common time, like this, or other time signatures like 12/8, 6/8, 6/16, 12/16, and so on. So it's a stylized dance, but I think it should be recognizable as a dance. In that case, therefore, some tempi are inappropriate. I could give a too slow version. What do you think of this? I should really have pedalled that to give a proper effect, of the effect that I don't want, incidentally. That's horrible. I hope you agree. I don't like that at all. Okay, so, or I could do it too fast. And that's commonly done. That's actually a virtuoso approach, the super virtuoso who wants to impress with the fingers. So you might, I don't know what you think of this. I mean, I don't think this sounds like a gigue either. Okay, so that's really inappropriate for the dance. Some people say, well, the piano is not authentic, therefore we can do anything we want, really. There's an audience for anything. Well, does it actually need to sound like a gigue? It might seem obvious, but I think the answer is yes. Just like a minuet should sound like a minuet. Like, that's too fast. So the gigue, what is the gigue about? Well, it's full of life and energy, vitality. So if you look at all the Italian gigues, the Gigues that Bach composed, they all have, roughly speaking, similar speeds. Now it's interesting to look at the partitas in English suites and the French suites and the well-tempered clavier, the Goldberg variations, the orchestral suites, cello suites, violin partitas, and so on. And they will give you an indication of the approximate speed and character of the Italian gigues. So I'll just play a few examples briefly. Here's the third partita, which is in 12/8. English Suite number 2, which is in 6/8. English Suite 4, 12/8. So having an approximate kind of similarity of speed here. Of course, there are people do vary, but English Suite number 6, which is in 12/16. What else? French Suite number 5 is in 12/16. What else we have here? Cello Suite in E flat. Finally, the Fugue in F major from the well-tempered clavier Book II. That's in 6/16. And so on. So, if I play the first partita at that speed, what does that sound like? So it's slower than average. I do play it quicker than that, actually. I don't play it super fast, but I do think that we can justify a little quicker tempo because of the slower change of harmonic rhythm. So let me share my own concept of the emotional journey. Bars 1 to 4, leaping for joy, it's playful, it's skittish, it's exuberant. Chromatic colorations in bars 2 and 3. Falling minor seconds, that's a very expressive Baroque figure. It's a sighing figure, and it plays an important part through the entire piece, and I'll come to that shortly as well. Bars 4 to 8, more melodic. There's a calmer sense of joy there. Bars 9 to 15, there's an increase in intensity with more dissonance and some darker emotions, not sadness, but maybe a hint of it. And there's an insistent repetition of this minor second, this sighing figure. And so, let me say some more things about the sighing motive. There are various examples that come to mind. We have the Well-Tempered Clavier Book II and the Prelude in A minor. Another very obvious example is the B minor Fugue at the end of Book I. And we have another B minor example in the Kyrie from the B minor Mass, which is of course at the end of Bach's life. Interestingly, in this piece in bars 10 to 12, we have the same melodic shape as the Kyrie. If you put the lower part down an octave, it sounds like this. This is bar 9. This is what I'm referring to. Now, these two pieces have very little in common. Well, nothing really. Partita is the start of Bach's life, very early piece. The Mass, of course, is one of the latest works, Mass in B minor. So what they do have is the same melodic shape, and this particular melodic shape in the Baroque rhetoric is called the Passus Duriusculus, for those interested, and it's a very interesting subject. This means dissonant leaping. So does that mean that this Gigue has a tragic element? Well, no, not at all, but I believe it does introduce a darker chromaticism, a serious undertone. So was Bach actually serious about this, or was he simply teasing? Now that's an interesting question, and I will also come to that shortly. Second half of the piece, bar 17 to 20, starts very confident until something changes around bar 19. From then on, bars 21 to 7, the falling minor second returns, and you have more chromatic harmonies which move higher and higher, and that upward movement normally represents an increase in intensity, and then you have a resolution in the minor. Bar 28, after arriving in the minor, there's a lessening of the tension as we go through E flat major. And then from bar 32, we have several bars, this is unusual, several bars with a struggling, determined attitude, 7 consecutive bars of diminished sevenths. So it's this I'm referring to here. Reminds me of the Chromatic Fantasie, where you do also have consecutive diminished sevenths. And so on. Then the falling minor second, the sighing figure returns almost to the end, and then you have a joyful resolution. And it's strong, but it's not an empty kind of gesture, not triumphalist. It's strong, but it's not too much. So overall, I think of this piece as joyful, as strong, exuberant, a dance, but definitely with an undertone of struggle and an element of pathos. Now, I don't view this chromaticism as teasing or pretend sadness, tongue-in-cheek, the expression. It's an interesting expression. Where did that originate? This concept of pretend sadness actually does exist occasionally. My personal view is that it happens at the end of the D major Prelude from Book I, this one here. That's interesting because most of the pieces are joyful, but suddenly you've got this unexpected diminished seventh near the end, and then you have a dramatic flourish where you have two more diminished sevenths, and then suddenly the drama's gone. It has evaporated. So I don't view the Gigue as having this mock seriousness because there are long stretches of chromaticism. It's not an exceptional moment which is incongruous, an exceptional moment of drama. So I don't see it as mock. I see it as a real undercurrent of emotional tension. Now let's talk about articulations. There are various possibilities. There are two voices talking to each other, so it's good to vary the articulation to distinguish the two voices, the upper and the lower, so they have their own identity. So I like to detach the upper line and slow the lower, personally. The falling minor second is always slowed. That's because it's a sigh. The sigh is inevitably legato. Now that's a Baroque figure. That particular falling minor second, as I've mentioned before, it plays an important part in the piece. So I'd like to demonstrate, and I'll play slowly so we can focus on these subtleties. The next few bars I play the melodic aspects in the left hand, the lower voice legato. So that's cantabile. I like to carry the principles of articulation through the whole piece, detaching the upper and slurring the lower. The falling minor second, as I said, I would always play legato. In bar 32, I would distinguish the upper and the lower voice by holding the upper slightly longer. And so on. But as usual, we have the freedom to choose our own articulations. It's just another aspect of how we can personalize the interpretation. Let's talk about dynamics. These are obviously related to the overall emotional concept, although other considerations come into the picture as well. I believe there should be a lightness overall. Now, why is that? Well, the triplet harmonic notes should be quieted to allow for the projection of the melodic notes, which is obviously desirable, and especially if you played this on the clavichord, that's what you would do, or if you arrange this for strings, that's what you would naturally do as well. Melodic shaping is important. Now, if the triplet notes are not light, you can't hear the shapes and the ends of the sighs, for example. So the triplets have to be very light for that reason. But there's also another reason which is very interesting. Kirnberger, who is an important theorist and student of Bach, he said that if a composer wrote like this with common time in triplets, he meant the concept to be light, as opposed to 12/8. So 12/8, heavier, common time with triplets has a light concept. Also, if you keep it light, not loud and aggressive and strong all the way through, you have more opportunity to highlight the chromatic nuances by getting a little louder. I play the chromatic parts, the dissonant parts, louder, which correlates actually with CPE Bach in his book, The True Art of Playing Keyboard Instruments, where he says that dissonances really should be played more strongly. Of course, there are a lot of exceptions to that. Now I'll just demonstrate my personal concept of the possible dynamics, and again I'll play it on the slower side. Bars 1 to 4, because this is one phrase, I indicate that by having a shape, a subtle crescendo diminuendo in the middle, and the falling sighing figure always has a diminuendo, which is the way Baroque instruments play that. I love the way they play that kind of shaping. After that, I have dynamic shape to indicate the melodic nature of the next part. Bars 8 to 16, there's a chromaticism which increases and moving higher, so there's a natural sense of crescendo, and as the line moves down, there's a natural sense of diminuendo as the tension subtly becomes less. Then you have the end of the first half, which is very strong, but not melodramatic, not too strong. So I'll play from the end of bar 8. Bars 17 to 20, you have another 4-bar phrase, and I indicate that by crescendo and diminuendo, a natural rise and fall. From bar 21, you have the most intense part of the movement, where it reaches higher and higher, becoming more and more intense. So I definitely play that more strongly, and I keep strong right up to the minor cadence in bar 28. Bar 32, there are bold leaps in this long sequence of diminished sevenths, so I'd keep strong for that. Perhaps I'd have a diminuendo halfway through, so bar 41 is not too strong to allow for more of a crescendo to the end. So I'll play from bar 32. Now we come to ornamentation. The only ornaments that we see here are in bars 5 and 7. Most of the time, according to the Baroque ornament tables, this kind of trill mostly started on the upper note. But with every aspect of Bach studies, and I mean every aspect, there's debate, and with this piece some harpsichordists choose to play the lower note first and some the upper note. I prefer the lower note. I believe it makes the musical line clearer when you're playing more quickly, but the choice is obviously personal. So there are 2 notated trills. Does that mean we only play 2 trills in the movement? Not at all. We can choose to play 2 if we wish, but we are at liberty to add many more. Question is where? The piece is very fast, so the hands are jumping around. It's very difficult to play fast trills, but technical difficulty shouldn't be a deterrent. Myself, I like to add more trills in the repeats. Ornamenting the repeats was something commonly done in Baroque times. Now let's talk about the repeats a little more in terms of adding trills and the other ways it's possible to vary the interpretation the second time around, which is really the purpose of the repeat. It's not simply let's hear it again. You're looking at the same music from a different angle. So ornaments are very important for that. They intensify the note, and I like to intensify the highest notes by adding ornaments. Also in bar 2. So let me just demonstrate. Start of bar 2, I can have a lower mordant if I wish. That's one option, and as I mentioned before, the highest notes. So we have a first part of the piece, which is, we're talking about bar 12, we have an A flat. This becomes, that's one option. And I also like to do the same thing, a lower mordant on the highest note of the piece, which is bar 24. So it's a C, that, also it's possible to put a lower mordant on the last note. There are many different ideas you can think of. It's another creative way to personalize your interpretation. I also add a turn at the end of bar 20, which is that. So I'll just play from bar 17. So many different possibilities. Let's talk about pedaling. Some people pedal bars 28, 29, 30, around that area. People vary, obviously. But myself, I don't like the sudden change in the piano's colour. I do pedal Bach. I often use pedal, but I think that there must be a congruity in the sound, a regularity in the sound with no strange incongruous changes of tone colour. Also, clarity must never be sacrificed. So it's a very personal subject, and I'd like to talk about the whole subject of pedaling in Bach in another video. Now let's talk about technique. How to solve the technical challenges. How do we physically play this piece? Well, firstly, which hand plays what? Strange question. Well, in the original, Bach notated the crotchets, the quarter notes, in the right hand, but most people play them with the left, like I was doing before. It's interesting to know why Bach would have said this. There are reasons to do with playing the harpsichord and the clavichord. People hypothesize, and there are also reasons associated with the articulations. Peter Williams, who's a well-known Bach scholar, he said that the use of the right hand would imply a more detached concept. So, interestingly, since the Czerny edition, people have played the quarter notes with the left hand. It's definitely much more comfortable. A friend of mine was playing this with the right hand and found it strangely difficult, and when she swapped, it was so much easier, so much more natural for playing the piano. I find I can get more control in this combination of hands. So try both, see how you feel. So how do we practice this piece efficiently? Well, it's the same with any piece really. We practice in sections. Best way is to learn one little section at a time, make an improvement on that, and then go to the next one. And the sections have to be small enough so that you don't stretch your abilities. You just focus on a little bit at a time. Section 1, I have from bars 1 to 4, just the third beat of bar 4. So I'll just let you know my personal sections. You might choose to do your own, but I thought I would share these with you. Section 2 is from the 4th beat of bar 4, ending on the 3rd beat of bar 8, Section 3 is from the 4th beat of bar 8 to the 3rd beat of bar 12. Section 4 is from the 4th beat of bar 12 to the end of bar 16. Section 5, we have bar 17 ending on the 3rd beat of bar 20. Section 6, 4th beat of bar 20 going to the 3rd beat of bar 24. Section 7, 4th beat of bar 24 to bar 27, the end of bar 27. Section 8, bars 27 to 31. Section 9, bar 32 all the way to bar 40. And the last section, section 10, from bar 41 to the end. Now you might like to notate your score as an example of the kind of suitable section lengths which I've just shared. As I said, sections really shouldn't be too long because the practicing should be analytical and you're using a lot of short-term memory, which is very efficient. It's a much more efficient way of trying to remember what happened a long time ago, as it were, many bars previously. Also, this is interesting, try to combine the musical awareness with the technical awareness. Difficult to do that, but try not to simply play mechanically, as I intimated earlier. If you're focusing particularly on technique, try to keep some aspect of the musical expression. You might want to understate it somewhat, but try to incorporate it as much as you can. When mastery is achieved, more nuances and subtleties just materialize, and musical details can be added more later as well, as you feel inspired. So after a certain amount of time thinking about technique, the technical aspects really should recede and the emotional involvement take over completely. That takes a real level of mastery where you can really stop thinking about how to play the notes and then focus on experiencing this wonderful music. Fingerings. Which fingerings do we use? Well, we choose our own according to comfort. We should be the most comfortable and relaxed. Write them in the score, not absolutely everything. That's good advice though, but enough. Write enough. Sometimes the left hand will be playing in the middle of where the right hand plays, and they have to cooperate. So you have to ensure the fingerings in this piece are very natural and relaxed so that the hands don't get in the way of each other. Also, consider which fingerings are suitable for leaps. I often leap to and from a third finger. I think that's the centre of gravity of the hand. Something else important, when you're choosing fingerings, try to play up to speed as much as you can, even if you don't know the piece very well. You really play in short bursts of speed because some fingerings do not work at a fast speed. So if you try to conceive an appropriate fingering at a slow speed and you try and speed it up, often it won't work. You have to really play quickly in order to judge accurately whether a fingering is going to work or not. So as regards my fingering, I can give you some suggestions. I'll simply play the beginning, the first part of the piece up to bar 16. You can see the fingering through the entire video actually on the camera hand view, but I'll just introduce some. Right hand from the beginning, 1-3. It's the most natural and relaxed. 1-3. Bar 5. 2-4, and then 2-3. 2-4, 2-3, and so on. That 2-4 and 2-3 really carry through. So as I said, the wrist can remain relaxed with that kind of fingering. Right, so the melodic notes, left hand 3, 3-2, 2-5, 2-5, 2-5, 3-2. This is bar 5, starts with the first finger. And the same again in the sequence. 3-2, 3, 3, 3, See, they're all threes. That's 2-5, 3, 3, 2, 3. That I use 3 again. Just feels the most relaxed for me. Now we come to evenness. Firstly, in the speed. Evenness is always crucial, but we should pay special attention to a perpetual motion piece like this, and any unevenness in the speed is immediately noticeable, so listen carefully to that. The first principle is always keep it completely even, all notes being the same speed, at a speed which is suitable for you to achieve that. Keep it slow, in other words, and then speed it up gradually, slightly more, retain the evenness. When the hands cooperate, going from one to the other, that's the time when unevenness could creep in. So simply think, every note really must be the same speed. You're thinking this. Now there's evenness in tone. Two kinds of evenness. So what could be problematic here? Well, you could accent the first beats, which is undesirable. You could end up going like this. And so on, that's one possibility. The other possibility is you could accent your right hand thumb because of the nature of that particular hand position. Perhaps your hand is not relaxed. Many different combinations. So listen for any unevenness at all. It doesn't mean it has to be mechanical or robotic, just even. And then shaped and musical. Now, all these things do come together. Let's talk about mastering the trills. Now, we thought about ornaments before, but adding ornaments is difficult because it's a fast piece. So how do we actually achieve accuracy in quick ornaments? Well, we have to practice it slowly. And same principles really. You find a slow speed where you can play them accurately, and then you speed up gradually. So in other words, section 2, which is the end of bar 4, so find that speed, and then the next day perhaps, not necessarily immediately, allow a little time for that to sink in. And you'll notice also that I was playing the ornaments on the beat, not before. That's before. That's open to debate, but normally Baroque performance practice, you play them on the beat. Also, as I mentioned, you can play them above the note. So that will be the slow practice. Quickly. It's up to you. So the same thing with the other ornaments. I'll just practice the turn, the ornament that I added in the repeat I mentioned before. The turn, which was end of bar 20. This. So when practicing slowly, it would sound something like this. Or slower, actually, would be better. I would actually coincide with the left hand. So the same principles really. Keep it slow, speed up gradually, keep relaxed. The next point is freedom from tension. One of the most important aspects of technique is the absence of inappropriate tension. Playing should be relaxed. It's going to impact everything you play. There should be really a conscious awareness of this freedom. So general advice, firstly, is to, have you ever done this? Just shake your hands and wrists in the air and relax. My mother told me to do that actually when I was very young. So the other thing, as I've been alluding to all the time, is play slowly, because that produces inevitably more ease, and then you speed up. When you speed up, try and consciously stay relaxed. Also, keep quieter. When everything is quiet, you're simply using your finger movement more without the weight, and that is a more relaxing experience. And when you've established that, you gradually speed up. You can add the weight and the volume. But should tension creep in, you have to then go back and play quieter again. So what about hand position? Because of the hand crossings, keep the right hand wrist slightly lower, but stay relaxed. And also don't play with a high left hand wrist for the leaps. That can create tension as well. So it's the getting back to being comfortable and relaxed in the hand position. So if I just demonstrate here, there's an interesting passage where the right hand wrist actually has to be very low, and that's section 9 from bar 32. Find my right hand wrist as low as it can get really. I can feel my fingers on top of the keys, that I'm not playing. All my fingers are in touch with the keys. But I keep establishing that wrist movement, which means that it's not tense. So you find a position, a hand position, where your wrists are moving. That's good advice. Next we have tone quality. Now this is closely linked again to relaxed technique. Staying close to the top of the keys, not lifting your fingers up high, because that turns them into percussive hammers, and you don't want a percussive sound. So to avoid the percussive sound, you really should play from the surface of the keys down to the key bed. And you don't want to hammer them. This is not Prokofiev. And what about speed? This is also related to relaxation, and the same principles of slow practice apply. Always work in sections, and when the section is correct at a given speed, then speed up a little bit more and a little bit more. And when you stop before the repetition, just do this to relax. Don't attempt the maximum speed for several weeks, even though it might seem like fun. It's tempting to think, I want to play it quickly now and enjoy myself, but try and establish that ease and control, and then gradually speed it up without sacrificing quality. Again, keep the same principles in mind when you repeat. Am I relaxed? Are my wrists moving? Is it even? Is it controlled? Now let me touch upon playing in time. I'd recommend you use the metronome occasionally, and I apologize for that. Personally, I have an allergy to the metronome. If you use your phone app, you can turn it right down. It's those noisy, clangy things that really do strange things to your brain. Anyway, it is useful because it tells you which speed you're playing at, obviously, and it's good to play the same speed every day, so you don't decide to play a lot quicker one day and slower the next day according to your mood, according to how warmed up you are. The other thing is it can tell you whether you're rushing. This kind of quick piece, you can easily be tempted to rush. It can also tell you if you're slowing down when it becomes difficult. That's another tendency. So occasionally check with the metronome, and that will actually help. Next we come to accuracy in the leaps. There's a lot of jumping around here. It's important your left hand arrives early on the note before it plays after you leap. Now this is called positioning, and it's established in slow practice. So you move quickly to the position, you wait on top of the note for a fraction of a second, and then you play the note. It's a conscious thing. So you're not simply going straight from one note to the next, you're waiting very, very slightly on the note. So let me demonstrate. You have to, if you're not used to this concept, you have to establish it at a slow speed first. What's a good place to go from? I think I'll go from bar 17. So if you look at my left hand, it's arriving early. And so on. So once you start speeding it up, there's still an element of that. It's much less obvious, but it's definitely in the background, and it's going to ensure accuracy in the leaps. So if you're not used to that concept of positioning, it's extremely relevant, and especially with any kind of leaping. Memorization. Are you used to playing for memory? It's not essential, although it's still preferred by most solo pianists for many reasons. Here it's desirable just for practical reasons, because it's hard to look up and down at the page and see all those leaps as well. If you don't want to memorize at all, perhaps just choose those sections which are the most difficult for you. So how do you memorize? I want to go into this whole subject in another video, but just for now I'll focus on telling you basic information. Just repeat a few bars at a time, perhaps make little sections within the sections I suggested, just a very small chunk. When you forget the notes, you can just, like anything else I suppose, tell yourself what that should have been. So for example, that should have been a B flat. So okay, so I think you get the idea. Another bit of advice is that you can sing, because a lot of memory is oral. So if you sing, it will help to imprint the sound of the music in your mind, which is very interesting. There's only one slight drawback, and that's you might end up sounding like what's his name? Glenn. What's his? Except he would play it twice as fast. That's it. So I hope this video has inspired you and helped you. If you found it interesting and valuable, please subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell, share the video with your friends and anyone you know who loves playing Bach on the piano, or anyone who loves playing Bach on anything, or anyone who just loves playing Bach. Please give me a thumbs up, that really does help. And if you have any comments or questions, please let me know. What did you enjoy about the video? What subjects would you like to hear more about in the future? It would be really good to hear from you. So thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.